The Artemis Gatherings portion was, we're not doing a lot of presentation, so this is more of an invitation. And we've been starting, as we learned in Canada, to begin with an Indigenous recognition of the land. The Cheyenne, Ute, and Arapaho here in Colorado would be who we're calling you from today. And so we wanted to recognize that any resilience starts with a recognition of where we're standing and where we're from. We're also wanted to recognize there's been a lot of loss in our communities here, especially event producers. I think talking with Don Pitts a little bit yesterday had a good perspective where we thought that musicians and his economic impacts looked like maybe $10,000 per year per musician. And then the losses to event producers and venues is going to be really, really intense. And we have an our family business, we have a event production business, and a water trees for festivals business that have just been pretty much put on ice. And then other family members who own wonderful production companies that have just been really hurt by this. And we've also had friends touched by the disease, as you all have. So wanted to stay grounded in what we're talking about. We definitely are coming to you with a very positive story of what we've been coming up with over the last 18 months. And so we're excited to share it, but we're all being put to the test right now and need to be patient with each other and loving. And so...
and that's not to diminish the losses that individual artists are experiencing in any way. It's just to kind of broaden the picture of who we're talking about in this conversation about creatives and who's experiencing loss right now. So Gigi is going to help us. We're going to do a quick poll because we want to know a little bit about you as we get started here. So Gigi is going to do a poll using Mentimeter. Here it comes. Our first question, we want to know, where are you from? So we'll give folks maybe about 30 seconds or so. It should be pretty.
All right. Hello, Colorado. That's our folks out here. New Jersey, Bethesda, Maryland, New York, LA. Molly North, how about you, my partner?
I'm from Wisconsin. Anybody logging in from Wisconsin out there? Colorado here. I've been here about 12 years, but always think Wisconsin's home. That's how us Midwesterners go. All right. That's great. That's good. Bahamas. Great. We got some international folks. This is wonderful. All right. Gigi, one more question. What sector of the music industry do you work in? So we're talking about something kind of
connected.
Yeah. We're talking about something here that's really connects a lot of different people from different parts of different sectors that are public and private and advocacy. And so just really want to know who we're talking to about the work that we're doing to see how we can talk to you specifically.
Acoustics. I love that is, heck yeah, that's a job. And students. So some people are getting credit. They're actually paying to listen to this right now.
Mental health. That's awesome. Legal. City planning. Great.
City planning is definitely where a lot of our overlap is with where this is going, as you'll find out here.
Mm-hmm. That's great. All right. Thank you so much for doing that, Gigi. We'll take the screen back. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So if you're logging in and you haven't heard of Artemis Gatherings yet, I'm just going to give kind of a 1 minute in a nutshell. What is it? And then we'll go into kind of how it came about and how it developed. So Artemis Gatherings, we call it, we say that it's using festivals as classrooms. Many of you who have helped to set up events, who have helped organize volunteers for events, or even attended events yourselves, that many times building a temporary festival is akin to building a small city. It includes a lot of the same systems like water, waste, structures for shelter, perimeters, food, communications, incident command centers. There's really a lot of similarities between temporary festivals and small cities. So our work is really to kind of help connect the dots between people who are doing this work as creatives and in the festival environment to recognize and amplify their experiences and their expertise in a way that would allow them and you and us to be involved then also in the case of an emergency. We're trying to make this connection between if you are someone who sets up temporary cities for your job, for a festival, that you can also be a really integral part of emergency response in your cities, and that you can be in a leadership position really quickly in a way that can really help your communities. So our work is really to connect people and resources, and we'd like to say that this is both helping our festivals become more vibrant now, and it's helping our communities become more resilient in the future when we are needed, when we're needed to kind of step up in the case of an emergency or disaster. So we had a couple of pictures that are not coming up, so we'll just keep rolling and we'll get them to you later, because we're coming back to this.
So the background for what we're going to talk about today, we thought, as opposed to just a presentation, was to use the Song Exploder format. So if you listen to that great podcast, musicians will go back and walk you through how they arrived at this song. So the Tour de Fat was one of my first experiences with making a festival over and over again and trying to reach an audience and have the traditional sense of just a performance on stage get broken apart into a way more interactive event. So I'm not sure if these are sharing yet, or I'll just talk about how it worked. So we would have these events of 5,000 to 25,000 people per event in cities around the country who would show up on their bicycles. And we wanted to make it something where people felt so inspired that their life would get a little changed and they wouldn't ride their bikes or wouldn't drive their cars so much. We invented this car for bike trade in 100 cities. People would ride their cars up to the stage, sign over the title, and they would go through a tunnel of 1,000 people's hands as they went into their new car-free lifestyle. And we wanted to just show that could happen. And so we would sing songs. Nathaniel Rateliff and Esme Patterson, other great friends from Colorado, would be on stage. There'd be gospel choir singing "This Little Bike of Mine, I'm Gonna Take a Ride." And then we'd write songs. I'll sing a little bit of one. This is to put people in the mood of being childlike. I dress up freaky and I ride my bike since the olden days. When I rode my trike, and I used to think I was all alone, but now I found you, I know I'm not alone. We don't sweat it, we hardly worry on. Oh, forget the rest of it. It was a long time ago. So the idea there was, let's write songs about bicycles. It's a love song. And I found a way to talk about advocacy that wasn't in the way I grew up as a Quaker peace activist protester, and tried to exemplify that, saying you catch more flies with honey, or Mother Teresa would never go to an anti-war rally, but she would go to a pro-peace rally. My friend Chris, my partner, taught me a lot about that, and I realized that these joyous occasions of getting together could be really transformative, and we got behind this feeling of shared vision. Molly and I worked together on some of them. She was the director of Bike Denver, and we had festivals that gathered a lot of people. So we're starting to realize how climate change and civil rights tie into these gatherings, and equity at these events has been really coming to bear. We're seeing that climate equity, transportation equity, these things, resilience is not something everybody can just have. There's a lot of people left out in the way that works. And we have a responsibility as event producers and artists and people working in policy to try to bring that to people's attention. So as a teacher, what I did kind of came together with this event production to say, how can we make an experiential learning environment happen at a festival? So what we're really doing is making a learning, teaching festival inside of another festival. So people are getting so turned on, their life is going to feel different. They're going to be, and maybe it's about stage design, weather emergencies, stuff like that. It's not what you traditionally think about going to an event about, but we want to leverage some of what we learned about how to teach people something deeply. So we'll you can check out the Artemis Gatherings. It's a very defined curriculum. It's a very lots of places for people like yourselves to plug in. And as they would say, each one teach one. What we're looking for and what we have a grant from the Performing Arts Readiness to do over the next 3 years is to do these around the country and have people in each area define their own goals. And then we host these Artemis Gatherings and talk about ways to gather. So,
yes. So Matt's background might sound a little bit more familiar and adjacent to some of yours. Though I was a musician as a K-12 student, I played bassoon and tenor sax and piano and cymbals. I don't primarily consider myself a musician anymore. I have a background in transportation planning and transportation advocacy, and now I'm a transportation engineer. And I really focus on multimodal work. I think that multimodal active transportation is going to be one of the major solutions for climate change, for environmental justice, and for declining physical and mental health outcomes. So there are some adjacencies in that way in this work that we do. So the work has really led us back together in a way that allows us to both really focus on community resilience by using festivals as classrooms. We've both had a lot of inspiring moments along the way in our journeys, and some of them have kind of looked similar and some of them have been really different. But the kind of inspiring moment that we shared together that we might be able to share with you here was when we were at Standing Rock in November of 2016. We went up to Standing Rock and this is where we really started to see that festivals and refugee camps and other gatherings like Standing Rock really have a lot of those same elements as small cities. So as we left Standing Rock, we spent about a week there, and here's a picture of Matt working with one of the local folks who spent about a week there helping with their electric system. And when we were driving away, it was about like a 10 or 12 hour drive home, I think, we started to write a curriculum. We started to write up both that people at Standing Rock could continue to use to have safe, sustainable, vibrant, healthy places to live, but also it kind of was the birthing of the Artemis Gatherings for us. So Matt will talk a little bit about how we developed this curriculum with some of our collaborators.
You bet. Let me stop that sharing. I'm not sure how it's working or not. So the collaborators that we're working with, primarily the big ones, have been Denver Arts and Venues. You all probably know Lisa Gagatas. If you don't, you should. She works as Create Denver's director here. It's been a longtime friend. And when I left New Belgium, I started working with her on the Denver music strategy as it was just releasing. And around that time, I took a course with Performing Arts Readiness, who will add to this stream, www.performingartsreadiness.org. And they are a nonprofit funded by the Mellon Foundation. After Hurricane Sandy, they formed to say, how are venues going to be better prepared to not shut down so completely, so utterly to all of their audiences, to all of their constituents, to their performers. And so it's created this really great network with free webinars and lots of grants for performing arts organizations to get emergency preparedness assistance and to start networking groups. So I took one of those courses on community resilience and had a wonderful conversation with Tom Clareson where we discussed this Art of Mass Gatherings concept, among other things. And he said, let's get you plugged in with a grant to work in Denver. I was hosted by Arts and Venues, and we began the work of doing emergency preparedness consulting here. Levitt Pavilion, who was just on a moment ago, also signed on in the beginning, along with Denver, the Civic Center, various other venues to look at how emergency preparedness works in different areas. So we started a network where people were giving us good information about what they had ready in their emergency plans and what they didn't. We saw a lot of gaps in places to work on that. And so we have been developing a lot of emergency plans that are shareable now. And if you look at performingartsreadiness.com, you can see what they are. And start thinking about working on your own. And by all means, fill out an application to get yourself a grant to work with your venue on emergency preparedness after COVID's over and we're gathering again, or even to make a more COVID cognizant emergency plan. Now's the time to begin working on that.
Great, back to me. So the Artemis Gatherings is this kind of amorphous thing that's kind of, it's developing as we meet new collaborators that have great ideas. We're really, our company is called Majestic Collaborations. We try to be primarily collaborative. And so the format of the Artemis Gatherings is that we bring together about 50 people in kind of a fishbowl experience inside of a large established signature event in a community. So for example, Denver Pride was where we hosted our first one this last summer. Other examples in your own communities, I'm sure you can think of, they're often in your signature parks. They're often, long running events. So these are the events that we want to work inside of because these are the kind of events that have emergency plans, that have composting systems, that have maybe ASL interpreters, that have a variety of things they're doing excellently with a lot of expertise. And of course, there are still some opportunities for them to learn. And so we bring together about 50 people from the local community. And this can be people who are in city planning. It can be people who are in acoustics. It can be people who are, or some of the other industry folks there, mental health. It can be any of you and any of your colleagues. It can be people who are more traditionally involved in emergency management, like police and fire and EMTs. And we're bringing together a really diverse group of 50 folks to do a really intensive day-long seminar symposium together in which we have some stated objectives or learning outcomes. So I just pulled it up here. I'm going to look away from the screen for a minute, but some of our learning outcomes were about magnifying communications, talking about how to increase safety and security through community involvement, et cetera, different tools that you can use to engage audiences and volunteers.
If I may, too, we had people teaching each of these courses who are experts in their communities. Yeah. So this might be your fire chief, someone from environmental health. It might be a zero waste expert. And then we also have budget to fly in 4 international experts who can be helping their community on something they want to learn more about.
Yeah. Yeah. So we, with each community, maybe New York has experts in 3 of the 5 categories. And so we fly someone in to kind of supplement. And then in New Orleans, they have experts in different areas. And so we supplement depending on which experts are already kind of in the local community. And then supplementing with the particular interest that a community has. Other outcomes might be around security and crowd management, water and waste systems, stages and structures, legal concerns, power and electric, unified command center, harm reduction, designing a neurodiverse event, which is kind of adjacent to one of the other ones. It's called optimizing for deaf and hard of hearing attendees. And then really the culmination and the theme of the whole thing is what is our role? What is the role of performing arts in community resilience? So we have some really kind of specific learning outcomes that help us get to this ultimate question of the role of performing arts in community resilience. And something that Matt and I have been leaning on a little bit lately is we're trying to find these enduring questions that can kind of guide our work. And so our enduring questions right now are, how can the public sector lean toward more creative solutions, more creative communications, and how can the creative sector lean in towards participating in some of these maybe more structured systems of emergency response. So that's our big questions right now. We're trying to answer and discover in community with people like you at these Artemis Gatherings events.
Totally. So speaking of you, and speaking of each one teach one, I've just been getting surprised left and right. The Event Safety Alliance has a yearly meeting in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, where the Clare brothers own that giant rehearsal stage for Beyoncé's and Springsteen's of the world. And then all of these event producer or stagecraft people will get together and talk about how to make safe special events in lots of different ways. And I'm so surprised by how many of them are like EMTs, how many of them understand how the incident command system works, how to work with authorities having jurisdiction. So they're mostly white males, but those skills put them as professionals in having a lot of agency if the poop hits the fan in their area. And so what we really want to do with Artemis Gatherings is to help more people inform and be informed about how to be prepared if you lost power in your neighborhood. Mm-hmm. If we're looking at climate change migration and we're looking at cities changing, how do we prepare to move the art of mass migration? How do cities prepare to receive people? Those are the sort of things that after COVID is done and this economic crisis is, developing, how do we have more agency as creative communities? And so we're really wanting to hear what you think you might teach a class on if you were teaching at an Art of Mass Gatherings to event producers and city staff on one little session. So Gigi, if you're not asleep, and I would understand
if you were.
Coffee. Boy, you've been working hard. If she's not ready, we'll just throw it in the chat.
So, if you're skilled, we just kind of want to know, we know what industries you're in and where you're from now. We want to know now if you were to be invited to be one of those teachers at a local event, a signature event in your community, or if you were, invited to come and be an expert at another one.
You could also say what you'd really like to take a class in.
Sure.
Well, I think we'll see two interests there. We can put them both in this stream. Let's just put them both in here. So like the acoustics person, I don't know, nerding out, like how do you make a cardioid base array so that people behind the stage aren't getting pounded and you don't get noise complaints? We'd love to have you teach a class on how to make a cardioid line array system. So I just volunteered you, whoever you are in acoustics. Yeah, we're definitely not in the one-way all-time caller, no-time listener. It's important that we make these events in the future together. So there is definitely a Artemis Gatherings website for you to check out. Data analysis for artists, cool. And you check that out. Performing Arts Readiness, a place to look for signing up for grants for performing arts preparedness. And we look forward to bringing Artemis Gatherings to your neck of the woods and making you help teach a class. If you want to apply for that, Gigi will be roped in, Storm, all of these cast characters. We have a little honorarium from Mellon and from PAR to bring folks out to teach what they know. What we really think is that doing this in, when we get to gather again in real spaces, it activates people's minds. It's like if you're going to study organic farming, you got to go to an organic farm to learn it best. You can't learn it all from PowerPoints. And so that's what I suppose most profound part of this is, and maybe to offer that to other folks too, that if you want to teach stuff, let's think more about field trips when we get to not be stuck in our homes anymore, of course. But that's a big part of it.